There was a time in my life when everything looked perfect. It had checked off all the boxes that family, society, culture, and religion told me I needed to have a happy life. So, satisfying career as an educator, beautiful, healthy family, our own home, cars in the driveway, vacations a year, lots of beautiful material things. And so, if my life checked off all the boxes and looked perfect, how is it that I still felt unhappy and unfulfilled with my life? It was through this unraveling that I discovered something life changing, that happiness isn't something we chase, it's something that we come home to. And that home is within us. So I ask you, have you ever wondered why success doesn't always equal joy? Why is it that even when we have it all, something still feels like there's something missing, that there's a void no matter how much more you buy, you achieve, you earn, where you go, or what you do, you can't seem to fill? But what if true happiness isn't out there waiting for it to be found, but rather something that's inside you and something that needs to be remembered? And most importantly, how do we reconnect and realign with that happiness that's inside of ourselves? And that is what my talk is about today, is recognizing that happiness is not found in our possessions, positions, titles, degrees, relationships, experiences, and appearance, where we say things like, I won't be happy until I find that perfect person. I lose those 10 pounds. I pay off my mortgage. I find that perfect person. I get that promotion at work. I buy that designer handbag. I go on that idyllic vacation. And only then will I be happy. But recognizing rather than happiness is a state of being. Happiness is an innate quality of our spiritual self. That infinite, eternal part of us is always happy, loving, and at peace. It's the other aspects of ourselves, our physical, mental, and emotional self, that may not be in alignment with that happiness. So when you don't physically feel well, of course, it's difficult for us to feel happy, but we need to take steps to realign with the part of us that is happy. When we know that happiness is always a part of us and happy in abundance, then it's like a huge weight can be removed from our shoulders, knowing that happiness is inside of us and that all we need to do is take steps to reconnect and to realign with it. But if we're working 60 to 80 hours a week and we leave no time for ourselves to connect with that happiness, and we get to the end of the week and we say, oh, my life sucks. Yeah, it does. Because how much time did you take reconnecting with the place inside of you that is always happy and happy in abundance? So happiness requires that we listen to the communication of all aspects of ourselves. And if those aspects are telling us that we're not happy, it means that we need to think about and utilize what's in our happiness toolkit to help us to realign. That toolkit has the things that we reach for, that we know help us to connect with that place of happiness. So it's important for us to live consciously and be aware of the things in our life that help us to reconnect. And what I mean by that is to recognize that those things that we believe our happiness is found in, like, restaurants or places that we travel to, or things that we buy, or things that we do that we think are providing that happiness, are not actually providing the happiness. What those things are doing is they act as a vehicle to help us connect to a place inside of us that is always happy and happy in abundance. And those are the things that we add to our happiness toolkit. What's in your toolkit is going to be different than what's in my toolkit. But it's important for us to know what those things are, because when we don't feel happy, because as I said, our physical, mental, or emotional self may be out of alignment with that happiness, we need to reach for those things. whether that's an uplifting playlist on your phone that you can immediately turn on. That's something for me. I reach for books, I reach for podcasts, I reach for things that remind me of the happiness that I am. I turned to particular individuals who make me laugh and make me feel good when I'm in their presence. So those are the things that we need to be aware of. Today, I'm going to talk to you about what are those 5 things that we can add to that happiness toolkit that we can reach for in those times. Now that we understand that happiness is an innate part of us, happiness is something that we come home to when we don't feel happy. Listening to the communication of all aspects, as I said, that if your physical self is telling you that you don't feel well, that you have dis-ease or disease in the body, how do you treat your body as the temple that it is, that it helps you to do all the different things that you want to do every single day? So how do you honor that temple? Maybe what practitioner do you need to go see? Maybe you're lacking sleep or water, all the different things that we need to do to honor that, to bring it back to that place of wholeness, of health, that our body is innately. But again, the world pulls us away every single day. And it requires that we take active steps to bring us back to that place of happiness, of peace, and of love. When our emotional self is telling us that we don't feel happy, to pay attention. What space am I in? Why don't I feel happy? Am I surrounded by individuals that aren't supporting my happiness? And what do I do about that? Perhaps disconnecting from individuals or friendships because they no longer serve you, or creating boundaries between those who perhaps again aren't leaving you feeling respected, honored, and loved. And your emotional self is telling you about those things. And then mentally, what thoughts might you be having about a particular situation, again, that isn't supporting your happiness? And so we need to tune into the things that our mental self is saying about ourselves and our life. That for me, that most of the self-talk I had was negative, that it was constantly sabotaging, belittling, demeaning me, that I hated on myself most of the time, that my mental self was constantly telling me that I wasn't pretty enough, that I wasn't skinny enough, that I wasn't athletic enough, I wasn't smart enough, I wasn't enough of many different things. And those were things that were said to me over the course of my life that I needed to start tuning into and rewiring and reprogramming my mind with thoughts that actually serve me instead of tearing me down, thoughts that empower me, uplift me. And so those are the things that when I say about realigning ourselves is paying attention to that communication and taking those active steps. So now I'm going to share with you what I consider my top 5 steps to happiness, the things that we need to do on an everyday basis, that in this happiness toolkit that I talked about, these are the things that we need to add, that we need to utilize every time the world seems to pull us away from the happiness that we are. And so my first step is meditation. Meditation was a practice that I adopted over 10 years ago, technically when I was at the lowest point of my life, when I wasn't happy, although my life checked off all the boxes. And I didn't talk about it with anybody for fear of loss of love, of rejection, that people wouldn't accept me. And so I didn't talk about it. And that led me to the lowest point. It had me spiraling down into a really dark place. And now that part of sharing how we're feeling with people who love you is so important, because our mental self can perpetuate lies about ourselves and our situations that may not actually be true. And so meditation was one of those practices that I began that now is so such a buzzword, and so many people are doing it, and I'm so happy to hear that. But when I began meditating, my family told me that I was a part of a cult, that I needed to stop doing it because it was so weird and woo woo. But meditation, I believe, is one of those gateway practices that helps us to immediately connect with our spiritual self. That was a part of ourself, myself, that although I grew up Catholic, connected to religion my entire life, nobody told me about my spiritual self. Nobody taught me how to connect to that part of myself. And when I alluded to that feeling that there's something missing, that there's a void in our life, that no matter how much more we buy, we earn, we achieve, we still feel like something's missing. And that many of the clients that I work with are exactly those people, that we've achieved a certain level of success in our life and still feel like, is this all there is to life? And there's actually more. There's a whole world inside of ourselves that we're not taught to know about, to connect with. And meditation, I believe, is one of those gateway practices that helps us to open those doors to that whole new realm inside of us that is always loving, at peace, and happy. And so there are so many different forms of meditation. So if you've tried meditation and you're like, oh, it didn't work for me because it's hard to like steady that monkey mind that's constantly thinking about all the different things that we need to do, it's perhaps that you haven't explored a form of meditation that works for you. There are so many different types. And so I invite you to try again, to perhaps start with guided meditations if you were going to start with a form of it, because it takes you on a bit of a journey that helps you to focus on something because of that journey, and perhaps being able to get to that place inside of yourself, to discover that love, peace, and happiness that is always there, and there in abundance. My next step would be self-love. So as I began to tune into that happiness that was inside of me, into that love, that unconditional love that was inside of me, that I had been searching for outside of myself my entire life, in all of my relationships, and then always feeling disappointed where I felt that people didn't love me the way that I wanted to. And it was because I wasn't loving myself. And I became aware of all the different ways that I wasn't loving myself, namely my mental self, that I was constantly criticizing myself, belittling, demeaning myself, and that I needed to tune into all of those ways and begin taking steps to love myself the way that I had always wanted from others, appreciating myself the way I had always wanted other people to appreciate me. And that technically I had lost myself in the living of my life, in trying to be the perfect mom, perfect wife, perfect daughter, perfect employee, perfect friend, trying to live up to all the expectations outside of me, and often dishonoring myself in the process. And I needed to stop doing that by loving all aspects of myself the way that I had always wanted, the way that I actually needed to, and the way that my inner being was instructing me to. That I had only known about my outer being, which was my personality, my identity. That if people ask me, who is Teresa? Well, Teresa's the mom, Teresa's the educator, Teresa's all the people I am on the inside. Not knowing about my inner being, which is again the Teresa that is infinite and eternal, the Teresa that is always loving, at peace, and happy. And through this journey of self-love and healing, I began to get to know who that part of myself is. And that part is so creative, so powerful, so extraordinary, so magnificent, so unique, so special. That part, we are all one in that magnificence. That part rests in all of us. That part is us. And so if you don't feel extraordinary and magnificent, because we all are that. We all deserve that knowing. And so that is what this talk is about today. How do we become reconnected with that knowing inside of all of us? Because that is the truth of who we really are. And a truth that I didn't know about. And a truth so much that I didn't know about that led me to the lowest point of my life and has now led me to do the mission that I feel called to do today, which is to help make the world a happier place by sharing the steps that we can take to live our happiest lives. And that's what these 5 steps are, but there's so many more and so unique to you. And so my third step that we're going to talk about is gratitude. Gratitude is directly correlated with happiness. So the more grateful we are, the happier we feel. And the happier we feel, the more grateful that we are. And so gratitude is about looking for all the small things that are going right in your life instead of focusing on all the things that are going wrong. And it's difficult for us to do that because we have a negativity bias. Actually, 80% of our thoughts can be negative, where we actually look to what's going wrong. And that's technically like a protection mechanism because it helps steer us away from the things that can hurt us or the things that can make us feel uncomfortable. But technically, if we rest in that 80% of negativity, then we're going to always look at life through the lens of this dark cloud. But we actually need to reprogram the mind to look to the things that are going right, to the things that we already have versus the things that are missing. And gratitude, immediately as soon as we start practicing it, helps to raise our vibration and helps to connect us to that place of happiness inside of us. And so when I began practicing gratitude again, at that time in my life, it was about every single night trying to think of 5 things that I could be grateful for from that day. And it's things that are as simple as my morning coffee that I love so much. And I can't wait to have even the night before, because I get to have that coffee, that first thing, and I sip it every morning with so much joy. And then knowing that your computer works as soon as you turn it on, that you have gas in your car, that you have clean water coming out of your faucet, that you have electricity to power all the different tools that help you every single day, that there are so many blessings that we take for granted that many people in other parts of the world don't even have access to, and yet we overlook, and we're so consumed with little things like, our Starbucks order was wrong, or our internet isn't working, or apps on our phone are acting glitchy. Those are the little things that take us away from our happiness, but actually are very inconsequential. And so I invite you to actually look for the things that we do take for granted and that we shouldn't, and that actually contributes so much to the beautiful life, the blessed life that we have access to. Another step that I'd like to draw your attention to is living or being in the now, that happiness is found in the present moment. But oftentimes we find ourselves living in the past, where we're thinking about our mistakes and our regret and our trauma and all the things that didn't go well, that guilt and that shame in a lot of that, of the things that happened in the past. Or we're living in the future, where we're future tripping and worrying and doubting and stressing about the things that perhaps may never happen, rather than just resting in the here and now and asking ourselves, are we okay? Are we okay now in this present moment? Is everything okay? Instead of worrying about the things that could be going wrong. Again, it's that like negativity bias that is technically trying to protect us, but oftentimes pulling us away from the happiness that is found in the here and now. And so being in the present moment is about practicing mindfulness, checking in with ourselves. That's what mindfulness really is. is taking a moment to check in, to be consciously aware of the present moment and say, how do I feel? What is my emotional self telling me? What is my physical self telling me? What is my mental self telling me? And what is my spiritual self saying to me? And constantly reminding myself of the words that my inner being is saying to me, that again, that I am extraordinary, powerful, creative, curious, imaginative, and reminding myself constantly of that truth when I start to feel that I'm being pulled away. And being in the now helps us to do that when you're out in nature and you're conscious of the warmth of the sun on your skin, the breeze on your skin or through your hair, the taste of the food, by not being on a device or watching TV while you're eating, but actually paying attention to the texture, to the tastes. That, as I said, when I sip my morning coffee, I try to be so present to that because it honestly tastes so good. And so being in the present moment allows us to see the gift of the present moment that it is offering us, that the truth is only ever now, that the past is a distant memory, and so is the future. It's all an illusion. And all we ever have is now, and being so present to that, because the now is the only thing really that's guaranteed. And lastly, I'd like to put to share my last step with you, which is following your bliss. Following your bliss means that you tune into your inner happiness and you allow it to guide you as a compass. That happiness is like a compass. That when you feel happy, it tells you that you are on path and on purpose. That I believe that we came here to be happy because we are happiness innately. And so if you're like, oh, that, all life is on earth is that it's crap, and then one day we die, I don't believe that that's what life is supposed to be like. And that happiness tells us when we're on path and living the life that we came here to live. And if we don't feel happy, it could be that we need that realignment and we're not on path. And what steps can we take to realign ourselves so that we do allow our joy to lead us? We do allow our passion to lead us. That when we are doing the things that excite us, that make us feel enthusiastic and energized, where we feel so in the flow, we know that we're on purpose. And that purpose is not one big thing that we came here to live, but rather a feeling where we feel like we're in exactly the right place at the right time, doing exactly what we're supposed to be doing with the right people. That sense of purpose for me has changed over the course of my life, depending on where I was as a teenager, as a young woman, as a mom, and where I am now, that sense of purpose has changed. But I always felt, well, especially after what I call my happiness journey, especially now, where I feel that I am doing exactly what I'm supposed to be doing, that I'm on purpose and on path with my life. And so following your bliss is not looking for and searching for happiness outside of yourself and looking for direction based on based on external circumstances or even external advice, but rather constantly tuning in and saying, do I feel happy in this moment? And if you're not, what steps can you take to realign and readjust so that you can, as I said, continue to be on path and on purpose? So following your joy rather than searching for happiness outside of yourself. And so that is that has taken me really to the end of my talk today, where I encourage you to tune in to yourself, to tune in to your happiness. And I ask you this question: how important is your happiness to you? Because your answer to that question will determine how committed and how dedicated you will be to taking the steps that it takes to realign and reconnect with a happiness that is always within you and within you in abundance. So if it matters to you that technically happiness is the foundation to everything we do, that if you ask yourself, why do you want the big house? Why do you want that special relationship? Why do you want a pet? Why do you want kids? Why do you want anything that you desire? It's because if you really drill down, you recognize that it's because you just want to be happy. And so if that's the truth and you're not feeling happy in your life, what steps can you start taking today? And it's small steps. That it could be, let's try to be more mindful, more conscious. That's actually step number one, becoming conscious and aware of the life that you are living every single day and tweaking it just slightly, taking small, consistent steps every single day that over time add up to big changes. Or it could be gratitude that I shared with you today, that every night just trying to think of 5 things that you could be grateful for from that day. And then perhaps integrating that in the morning, that when we practice gratitude in the morning, that it helps to release 1,400 biochemicals in the body that actually last for 6 hours, helping us to be happy for most of our day when we practice it, as in the evening and in the morning. So what small step could you start taking today that, as I said, over time adds up to big changes? If I would have to choose one, it would be self-love. What steps could you start taking today to just love yourself just that little bit more? And that builds on another step and another step. And so, as I said, your answer will determine how committed and how dedicated you will be to prioritizing your happiness every single day, because the world does this. It pulls us away. And our job is to reconnect and realign to that place inside of us that is always happy and happy in abundance. Thank you.